I never thought a simple Monday morning could change everything. My name is Ryan, 22, a college student who lives with my mom in the family home while juggling part-time work at a local bookstore. On the surface, life seems ordinary. Books, classes, and quiet evenings. But beneath that ordinary exterior lies a secret I've carefully guarded for years. I've always been drawn to the feminine. The feel of soft fabrics, the delicate brush of makeup, the transformation that comes from stepping into high heels. It thrills me, excites me, and terrifies me all at once. I've experimented in secret for years, mostly when no one was around. My room is a small sanctuary of lipstick, skirts, stockings, and wigs I've collected in silence. I've never shared this side of myself, not with friends, not with colleagues, not even with Emma, my girlfriend. She knows a little, the playful hints and minor experiments, but nothing serious. With her, I maintain the careful balance between who I am and the persona I hide from the world. The morning started like any other, sunlight spilling through the kitchen window and casting patterns across the wooden floor. Mom was unusually cheerful, humming a tune I couldn't place as she prepared breakfast. She had always been supportive in her way, though she knew nothing of my secret hobbies. That morning, her gaze lingered on me a little longer than usual, a knowing glint in her eye that made my stomach tighten. "Ryan," she said, placing a plate of pancakes on the table, "I have a little challenge for you." I choked slightly on my fork, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. A challenge? My mom never did things like this. Challenge, I repeated cautiously, my voice barely hiding the rising tension in my chest. "Yes," she said, smiling warmly but firmly. "I want to see what you're capable of. Tonight, you'll explore something new, something feminine. Trust me, you'll thank me later." I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but her expression told me otherwise. There was no humor in her eyes, only determination. My mind raced. Was this a game? A lesson? Or had she somehow discovered the secret I had guarded so fiercely? Emma's voice echoed in my mind. "Take it slow, Ryan. Don't rush into anything you're not ready for." But Mom's challenge wasn't something I could refuse. There was an intensity to her tone, a subtle command that made my pulse race. By evening, the details became clear. Mom had set up a feminine transformation scenario. The living room was rearranged, a vanity with lights, a neatly folded selection of skirts and dresses, and makeup meticulously organized. My hands trembled as I approached the setup. Each item felt like a test, a probe into a side of myself I had never dared to fully embrace in front of another person, especially my mother. The first step was clothing. I hesitated before picking up a soft, flowing dress Mom had chosen for me. The fabric was silky, warm to the touch, and it carried an intoxicating promise of transformation. Slipping it over my head, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The dress clung delicately to my shoulders and waist, framing my body in a way I had never experienced. The sensation was thrilling, but a part of me recoiled, acutely aware of how exposed I felt. Next came makeup. I sat at the vanity, Mom standing behind me with a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Just follow my lead," she said softly. I picked up the brushes hesitantly, applying foundation and blush under her watchful eye. The act of painting my face, shaping my lips, contouring my cheeks, was both exhilarating and terrifying. Each stroke of the brush transformed me, layer by layer, into someone both familiar and entirely new. The final touch was hair. Mom had laid out a wig with cascading curls, golden and vibrant. Placing it on my head, I barely recognized the reflection staring back at me. The transformation was nearly complete. I was no longer just Ryan. I was a version of myself that embraced the femininity I had always kept hidden. Looking at the mirror, I felt a swirl of conflicting emotions: fear, excitement, vulnerability, and an intoxicating sense of power. I had crossed a threshold. Mom's challenge wasn't just a game. It was a doorway into a part of myself I had long denied. "Beautiful," Mom whispered, her tone both proud and encouraging. "Now step into it fully. Own it."
I did.
tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. The dress swayed around my legs, my hands moved with newfound grace, and the reflection in the mirror seemed almost alive. For the first time, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't pretending. I was embracing a side of myself that had existed in secret for so long, and it felt electric. But with exhilaration came fear. Emma didn't know. Friends didn't know. What would happen if someone saw me like this? The secret that had defined my hidden world was now at risk, and the stakes were higher than ever. Mom smiled, sensing my internal struggle. This is just the beginning, Ryan. Tonight, you'll discover what it truly means to be feminine and how much power and freedom it can give you. Are you ready? I swallowed hard, my heart racing, and nodded. Ready or not, the challenge had begun. After the initial shock and exhilaration of the morning, the challenge truly began. Mom had laid out a structured plan. I would spend the evening exploring not just appearance, but mannerisms, gestures, and the subtle nuances of femininity. Every detail was under her watchful eye, a mix of guidance, expectation, and subtle pressure. The first stage was clothing. The dress I had tried on earlier now became the focus. I studied it carefully, noticing how the fabric flowed with movement, how the cut emphasized curves I had barely noticed in myself. Mom watched silently as I slipped it on again, her eyes scanning my posture and stance. Stand tall, she instructed. Femininity is not just in the clothes, it's in how you carry yourself. I lifted my chin, straightened my shoulders, and tried to mimic the poise she demonstrated. The feeling was unfamiliar. I was aware of every line of my body, every sway of my hips, every shift of weight on my feet. The dress clung in ways that made me conscious of the body I inhabited, both thrilling and disorienting. Next came the makeup. Mom guided me through each step. Foundation, contouring, blush, eyeliner, mascara, and lip gloss. The brushes felt alien in my hands at first, the motions deliberate and precise. As layers of color transformed my features, I felt a strange mix of power and vulnerability. The reflection staring back at me wasn't fully Ryan anymore. It was a hybrid, a version of myself shaped by my hidden desires and my mom's careful instructions. "You're doing well," Mom said, smiling. "Notice how small changes can make a big difference. The right touch can change how the world sees you and how you see yourself." I nodded, though my heart raced with both excitement and fear. The thrill of transformation collided with the anxiety of exposure. Emma didn't know. My friends didn't know. My secret life, once safely hidden behind closed doors, now seemed dangerously close to being revealed. Then came the wig, a golden cascade of curls that framed my face perfectly. Placing it over my natural hair, I barely recognized the reflection. The transformation was nearly complete. I felt light, feminine, and completely different, yet still me. The duality was intoxicating. Mom guided me through mannerisms next. "Small gestures matter," she said. "The tilt of your head, the way you move your hands, the way you sit, femininity is in the details." She demonstrated, and I copied. I noticed how my movements felt exaggerated at first, clumsy yet intriguing. Each gesture carried a thrill. Being feminine in motion was entirely different from being feminine in stillness. We moved to more challenging exercises, walking in heels, balancing gracefully, and sitting in ways that accentuated my curves. My feet ached from the unfamiliar shoes, my legs trembled from new postures, and yet a rush of exhilaration pulsed through me. Every step was both a test and a discovery. Mom didn't just watch. She pushed me, gently but firmly. "You're capable of more than you think," she said. "Don't hold back. Explore this side fully. Don't be afraid of what it might mean." The evening progressed, each task escalating the intensity. Mom introduced me to the art of subtle expression, smiling just right, tilting my head in a certain way, accentuating my eyes through eyeliner and mascara. The reflection in the mirror became more alive, more confident, and yet also more exposed. I felt both powerful and vulnerable, exhilarated and terrified. Then came a critical test, interacting as my feminine self. Mom had arranged for me to speak, move, and even flirt slightly in front of a camera she set up. The goal was to observe how I carried the transformation beyond static reflection, to test whether the persona could exist dynamically. I hesitated, my hands trembling. Speaking as this version of myself felt like stepping into another life entirely. Each word, each inflection, felt like a confession. Mom encouraged me, but the fear of exposure gnawed at my confidence. Would Emma ever accept this side of me? Would anyone understand? Could I control this new persona without losing myself entirely? The first few attempts were awkward. My voice wavered, my posture faltered, and the gestures seemed unnatural. Mom corrected gently but firmly, guiding me back into confidence. This isn't just about looking feminine, she reminded me. It's about feeling it, living it. Gradually, I began to relax. Movements flowed, gestures became natural, and the persona I had feared was emerging as something I could inhabit fully. The reflection in the mirror smiled back at me. Not just Ryan, not just a version imposed by Mom, but a fusion of both, a feminine, confident self I had never dared to explore openly. But the thrill came with danger. Every knock on the door, every creak of the floorboards, made me tense. Emma could return at any moment. A neighbor could glance in. The secrecy that had allowed me to experiment freely now became a source of anxiety. The stakes were higher, and the suspense palpable. Mom watched keenly, her presence both comforting and unnerving. This is the core of the challenge, she said softly. Balancing who you are inside with how you appear outside. Can you maintain this? Can you own it fully? I realized then that the challenge wasn't just physical. It was psychological, emotional, and deeply personal. I had to navigate fear, desire, and the thrill of being caught all at once. Each step, each gesture, each layer of makeup was a test of both skill and courage. Hours passed. My hands ached from precision. My feet ached from heels, but a new confidence surged through me. The persona was no longer imposed. It was part of me. Yet the suspense remained. Would I be exposed? Could I return to normal without losing the thrill? The line between secrecy and revelation had never been thinner. Finally, Mom allowed a short break. I collapsed onto the couch, exhausted yet exhilarated. The reflection in the mirror seemed alive, teasing me with possibilities, daring me to embrace fully what I had only glimpsed before. And then another knock at the door. My heart leapt. Could it be Emma? A neighbor? Mom's challenge had taught me control, but not prepared me for this moment of real uncertainty. Every instinct screamed to hide, to retreat to my familiar self, but a deeper thrill urged me forward. I stood, smoothing my dress, adjusting my wig, and preparing to face whatever, or whoever, was on the other side. The suspense was at its peak. The transformation had begun, but the ultimate test was yet to come. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through the window, highlighting the aftermath of the previous night's transformation. My reflection in the mirror still carried traces of the persona I had embraced. Delicate makeup, smooth hair, and the feminine poise Mom had insisted I practice. I felt an odd mixture of exhilaration and dread. Last night's exercises had been private. Tonight, they would not be. Mom had set the ultimate challenge. I was to spend the day as my feminine self, in public, blending into a bustling cafe where my friends and some neighbors often gathered. The thought made my heart pound. Every step I took outside the safety of our home could expose the secret I had nurtured in silence for years. I dressed carefully, choosing a flowing dress that clung to my frame in the most flattering way. The heels pinched slightly at my toes, but I ignored the discomfort, focusing instead on my posture. Makeup was applied with precision, foundation, blush, eyeliner, mascara, and a subtle lip gloss that emphasized my new persona without drawing undue attention. My wig fell perfectly into place, cascading curls framing my face. I barely recognized the girl in the reflection, yet she felt strangely like me, an extension of Ryan I had only just begun to explore. Mom's eyes sparkled with pride. "Remember," she said, "this is about confidence. If you act uncertain, People will notice. Own it, and you'll thrive. The cafe loomed ahead, bustling with morning chatter and clinking cups. Each step toward the entrance tightened the knot in my stomach. I could feel every eye glancing in my direction, every potential observer a threat to my carefully hidden identity. My heart raced. Could I maintain composure under scrutiny? Inside, the scent of coffee and pastries filled the air. Friends greeted me, their expressions ranging from curiosity to admiration. I smiled, moving with a newfound grace, adjusting my hands and gestures as Mom had taught me. For the first few minutes, I was nearly convincing. No one suspected the secret I carried. But then came the first obstacle. As I reached for a cup of coffee, my heel caught slightly on the cafe floor. I stumbled, catching myself just in time, cheeks burning with embarrassment. A friend glanced at me, eyebrow raised. I laughed it off, heart hammering, and focused on regaining poise. The small slip sent adrenaline surging through me, reminding me of the fragility of my transformation. One wrong move, and everything could unravel. Throughout the morning, the tension never fully subsided. Each interaction was a test. I moved, spoke, and smiled in ways that were intentionally feminine, yet every gesture carried a whisper of vulnerability. People's reactions varied. Some admired the grace, some glanced curiously, and one neighbor's lingering stare made my heart race. Then came the twist, Emma. She had come to the cafe unexpectedly, seeking to surprise me. Her eyes locked on me, and in that instant, the world seemed to shrink. My heart skipped. How much had she noticed? Would she recognize the feminine version of me, or dismiss it as a playful experiment? Panic and excitement surged simultaneously. Mom's guidance echoed in my mind. Confidence is key. I took a deep breath, walked toward Emma, and smiled. "Hey," I said, trying to infuse my voice with the practiced softness and warmth Mom had taught me. Emma blinked, a mix of surprise and admiration crossing her face. "Ryan, or wow, you look different." The words hit me like a thunderbolt. Different. Was it good? Was it shocking? Was my secret safe? Or had I crossed a line I couldn't recover from? Before I could respond, the next obstacle appeared, a spilled coffee cup near the counter. I moved to help, the heels making balance precarious. A slight misstep sent my wig brushing the edge of the counter. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought it might slip, exposing the careful facade I had built. I steadied it, hands trembling, and managed to maintain composure, but the thrill and fear of being caught surged through me like wildfire. Mom's challenge was more than physical, it was emotional, testing every nerve, every layer of my identity. I felt exhilaration and vulnerability intertwining. I was powerful in this persona, yet every moment outside the home was a delicate dance between exposure and secrecy. Hours passed. Emma began asking questions, commenting on my appearance, and teasing playfully. I responded with practiced grace, my gestures and tone carefully moderated. I could see curiosity sparkling in her eyes, but no judgment. Relief surged through me. Perhaps she could accept this side of me, perhaps not. The uncertainty was electrifying. Then, a symbolic moment. While adjusting my dress near the cafe's mirror, a gust from the entrance fan caused a small slip. My wig shifted slightly, revealing a hint of my natural hair underneath. My pulse spiked. Could I recover before anyone noticed? I adjusted it quickly, heart racing. The mirror reflected the duality I carried, Ryan hidden beneath the polished, feminine exterior. One small mishap, one glance from the wrong person, and the secret could explode. As the day wore on, I grew more adept at navigating the challenges. Interacting, moving, and speaking as my feminine persona became natural, almost intuitive. Yet the suspense never left. The public space magnified every slip, every glance, every potential revelation. The thrill of transformation intertwined with the fear of discovery, creating a tension that was almost unbearable. Finally, the day ended, and Mom guided me back home. I was exhausted, physically from the hours of movement and heels, emotionally from the intensity of maintaining composure, and mentally from the constant calculations to avoid exposure. Yet there was a strange sense of pride. I had stepped fully into the challenge, survived, and discovered a new depth of myself. As we entered the apartment, a faint knock echoed from the door. My pulse quickened. Mom raised an eyebrow, a subtle grin forming. "The challenge isn't over," she whispered. My heart leapt. The suspense, the thrill, the fear of exposure, they weren't finished. I realized then that the transformation wasn't just overnight. It was ongoing, testing my limits, my courage, and my ability to embrace a side of myself I had long denied. The apartment was quiet when we returned from the cafe. My legs ached from the heels, my arms trembled from maintaining graceful gestures, and my reflection still shimmered with the feminine persona I had inhabited all day. The challenge had pushed me further than I had ever gone, and yet the tension lingered. Every glance from Emma earlier, every subtle reaction from strangers, had left my nerves frayed and my heart racing. Mom smiled, satisfied with my progress. "You did wonderfully today," she said softly, almost reverently. "But this isn't over. There's one final test tonight." I froze. One final test? After a day of navigating public spaces, mastering heels, and maintaining composure, my body and mind were exhausted. My reflection in the mirror, however, stared back with defiance. The feminine version of me, bold and confident, seemed ready to take on whatever came next, even if I wasn't. Suddenly, the sharp ring of the doorbell cut through the quiet. My pulse skyrocketed. Who could it be at this hour? Emma? A neighbor? Someone from work? The sound echoed ominously through the apartment, each chime amplifying my anxiety. Mom glanced at me, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "This is part of it. Face it." I swallowed hard and moved toward the door, my dress swaying, heels clicking on the wooden floor. Each step was calculated, controlled, but the tremor in my hands betrayed my fear. With a deep breath, I peeked through the peephole. No one was there. Only a small envelope lay at the doorstep. My name was written neatly across it in Mom's familiar handwriting. My heart thumped as I bent to pick it up, fingers brushing the paper. The envelope felt heavier than it should, as if it carried more than just words. I tore it open. Inside was a single note. "Tonight you must decide. Will you embrace the version of yourself I've revealed, or retreat to the shadows? The choice will change everything." The message hit me like lightning. My secret, my exploration, my thrill, all of it hung in the balance. I could feel the weight of possibility pressing down on me. Embracing this fully meant exposure, vulnerability, and an entirely new way of living. Retreating meant safety, normalcy, and the dull ache of denying a side of myself I had only just discovered. I clutched the note, the edges crumpling under the tension in my hands. Mom's eyes met mine, patient yet insistent. "The choice is yours," she said softly. "No one can decide for you." I took a shaky step toward the living room, my reflection in the mirror catching my gaze. The feminine persona I had worked so hard to embody stared back at me, eyes filled with daring, curiosity, and an undeniable challenge. Part of me longed to melt back into the familiar, to shed the heels and dress and hide from the world. Another part, stronger and more daring than I expected, whispered, "Step into it. Live it. Own it." And then the sound of footsteps. Not inside the apartment, but outside. The doorbell rang again, insistent this time. Panic surged through me. Could it be Emma returning unexpectedly? Or someone else who might see me, unprepared and exposed? My breath caught in my throat as I weighed my next move. I glanced at Mom. She remained calm, almost serene, her eyes reflecting confidence in me I wasn't sure I possessed. "Whatever happens, remember who you are tonight," she said. "You are not just Ryan, and you are not just the persona. You are both, and this is your moment." The doorbell rang a third time, more urgent. My pulse hammered in my ears. Heart pounding, I realized that whatever choice I made in the next moments could define me forever. Would I open the door as Ryan, retreating to my safe identity? Or would I step fully into the feminine version, risking exposure, judgment, and perhaps even ridicule? Every instinct screamed for caution. My mind raced through scenarios. Emma gasping in surprise, neighbors whispering, friends discovering my secret. Yet underneath the fear, a thrill I had never experienced before surged through me. The adrenaline, the excitement, the liberation of stepping fully into this side of myself. It was intoxicating. I stood frozen, hand hovering over the doorknob, dress swaying slightly as if urging me forward. The sound of my own heartbeat filled the room, deafening in its intensity. I realized then that this wasn't just a test of appearance or mannerisms. It was a test of courage, identity, and the willingness to embrace a part of myself I had always hidden. The doorbell rang once more, sharp and commanding. Time seemed to stretch, each second heavier than the last. I swallowed, a mixture of fear and anticipation tightening my chest. I could feel the feminine persona within me, confident and poised, ready to face whatever, or whoever, awaited outside. And yet, the voice of caution, the safety of hiding, whispered from the shadows of my mind. Finally, with trembling fingers, I reached for the doorknob. My reflection caught my eye one last time, the duality of Ryan and the feminine version staring back. The choice was mine, and whatever lay beyond that door would change everything. I took a deep breath, heart racing, and turned the knob, and the screen cuts to black.